Good evening. I'm Robert Townsend. Tonight, a man is in jail after being charged in a deadly domestic disturbance in Afton. He's accused of killing a woman police say he was dating. New tonight, 5 on your side's Annie Kroll spoke with the victim's family about the legacy they know she's already leaving behind.
It's still like a shocking to me, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm still like I'm in a dream.
The new reality for Calvinita Brock after losing her youngest daughter, Kelsey Elem. St. Louis County Police say just after 11 p.m. on Thursday, a fight between 21-year-old Martino Lewis and a woman he was in a romantic relationship with broke out in the 5800 block of Grace Avenue. Charging documents say an eyewitness overheard an argument on Thursday night, but it was Kelsey's family who says that escalated into the man they call Tino punching Kelsey so badly in the mouth she started bleeding.
They always been arguing for some reason. I always stayed into it because my baby was she's a legend, she was trying to do her thing, but this was one that she was always supporting, taking care of, helping. This a dude that she was doing all this stuff for, and this is what you did?
Right. Documents say Kelsey was afraid Lewis was going to get her gun and asked a witness to call police. While he was on with 911, he heard a gunshot and saw Lewis run out of the house to drive away in Kelsey's car. Less than 48 hours later, Brock, who said the two were close friends, had to clean out the home her daughter was killed in.
All that blood and brains and whatever that's in her room, that was wow. There wasn't nothing about drop on the floor. No. Nothing.
This is the story of Kelsey Elem. On April 24th, 2025, at 11:15 p.m., St. Louis County Police responded to a report of a domestic disturbance in the 5800 block of Grace Avenue in Afton, Missouri. A witness had called 911 after hearing an argument and a gunshot. When officers arrived, they located 25-year-old Kelsey Elem with a gunshot wound. She was transported to a nearby hospital, where she was later pronounced dead. The suspect, identified as 21-year-old Martino Lewis, was reported to have fled the scene in the victim's vehicle before police arrived. According to official documents, the dispute between Lewis and Elem had escalated into physical violence. Witness statements confirmed that Lewis struck Elem during the argument. Elem reportedly asked for help and told a witness to contact 911. While the call was in progress, the gunshot was heard. Investigators determined that Lewis left the scene immediately after the shooting and attempted to dispose of the firearm by giving it to another person. During questioning, Lewis provided a statement claiming that Elem was shot while they were driving and that he had dropped her off at a hospital. Investigators later confirmed that statement to be false. Evidence and witness accounts established that the shooting occurred inside the residence. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now let's dive in.
First on Fox, a man is in jail tonight after being charged in the deadly shooting of a young woman in Afton. Family members are speaking out about their heartbreaking loss as the investigation unfolds. Fox 2's Kelly Hoskins has more on the heartbreaking details.
My daughter was so amazing. She didn't deserve to be where she at right now.
Calvina Brooks says a family's worst nightmare is now their reality as she mourns the loss of her daughter, 25-year-old Kelsey Elem. Brooks says her daughter was full of life, now gone after a deadly act of violence. St. Louis County Police say 21-year-old Martino Lewis is charged with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and domestic assault in connection with the death of Elem. Investigators say just after 11 p.m. last week, Lewis and Elem, who were in a dating relationship, got into a violent argument inside a home in the 5800 block of Grace Avenue in Afton. Charging documents reveal eyewitnesses overheard the fight and saw Lewis punch Elem, causing her to bleed. Moments later, police say a gunshot rang out.
My baby was taken away from me by a young man, supposed to have been her friend that she was taking care of, that she had so much, she wasn't in love or none of that. It was just about the heart and the care that she was trying to support him and help him.
Family members say Elem was a strong advocate for the transgender community.
She outspoken. I can describe Kelsey in so many ways. She was just a light. She was my world, my best friend.
Family said she was an advocate for the transgender community and was a consistent friend to strangers.
She'll take her shoes off her feet and get to a person.
Do it plenty of times.
Every
time we ride past the homeless, she always give everybody $1. She make sure you hungry. She just one of them type of persons that always looked out for everybody.
Kelsey Elem, age 25, was identified as a victim in a domestic-related shooting that occurred in Afton, Missouri on April 24, 2025. Public records and law enforcement reports confirm her name and age, but additional personal details, such as educational background, employment status, and previous residential history, have not been released. Her identity was verified by the St. Louis County Police Department, which also confirmed that she was found with a fatal gunshot wound following a domestic dispute. Elem's relationship with the suspect, identified as 21-year-old Martino Lewis, is reported as romantic in nature. Law enforcement documents and multiple verified media outlets indicate that the two were involved in an ongoing relationship prior to the incident. No formal records of prior domestic violence complaints, restraining orders, or documented physical altercations between them have been publicly disclosed. This absence of prior reports leaves a gap in understanding whether this incident followed a pattern of escalating domestic conflict or occurred as a singular violent episode. Elem's living situation places her at a residence located in the 5800 block of Grace Avenue in Afton, within St. Louis County. The exact details regarding whether she resided alone or shared the home with Lewis or other individuals have not been confirmed. Witnesses cited in police reports indicate that both individuals were present in the home at the time of the dispute. No additional roommates or household members have been officially identified, though this remains an area requiring further verification to determine if anyone else was consistently residing at the property or present during prior altercations. Behavioral patterns and any known conflicts preceding the incident remain largely undocumented. There is no public record of Elem having filed prior police reports against Lewis or any other individual. However, witness statement from a night of April 24th describes signs of fear and distress, suggesting an argument had escalated to physical violence. Reports state that Elem asked a witness to contact 911 shortly before the shooting occurred, an indication that she recognized the level of danger in the situation. Beyond this, there is no existing documentation of Elem having previously expressed fear or made statements regarding personal safety threats before the fatal event. External witness reports confirm that arguments between Elem and Lewis were observed on the evening of the incident. Neighbors and bystanders described a dispute that turned physical before the gunshot was heard. These observations remain a critical part of reconstructing the timeline and verifying the nature of the relationship leading up to the shooting. Elem's socioeconomic and social context has only been partially identified. She was connected to the East St. Louis area through her family, including her mother, Calvinita Brock, who later coordinated funeral arrangements. Information about Elem's occupation or income source is not currently available in public records. Community organizations and local advocates have referenced her within the broader context of violence against Black transgender women, as some reports identify her as a Black trans woman. This aspect of her identity, while not consistently reported across all official documents, is significant in evaluating how the case has been covered and the level of attention it has received from both media and advocacy groups. Overall, verified information about Kelsey Elem remains limited to confirmed identification details, relationship context, and the known circumstances immediately preceding her death. Areas requiring additional research include her employment history, full domestic background, potential prior incidents of violence or threats, and verification of her living arrangements at the time of the event. These elements are essential for a complete factual profile of the victim and a deeper understanding of the conditions that preceded the fatal shooting on April 24, 2025. On the night of April 24, 2025, events inside a residence on the 5800 block of Grace Avenue in Afton, Missouri, turned fatal. The sequence of actions leading to the death of 25-year-old Kelsey Elem unfolded within minutes and was partially reconstructed through witness accounts, emergency call logs, and law enforcement reports. The case later resulted in the arrest and charging of 21-year-old Martino Lewis for second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and third-degree domestic assault. According to the probable cause statement and witness accounts, an argument began between Kelsey Elem and Martino Lewis inside the residence. The disagreement reportedly escalated from a verbal dispute into a physical confrontation. Witnesses at the scene observed Lewis striking Elem multiple times with his fists. This physical violence became a crucial part of the evidence later presented to investigators. During the altercation, Elem expressed fear for her safety. Reports indicate that she mentioned retrieving her firearm, a detail that was confirmed by witness testimony. This statement of fear and intention to arm herself preceded the final moments of the confrontation. At least one witness, noticing the escalation, was instructed by Elem to contact emergency services. The witness began dialing 911 as the situation worsened. This point marks a significant timeline indicator, an active domestic dispute in progress with at least one witness aware of immediate danger and already connected to emergency dispatchers. Records show that this call became a critical timestamp in the investigation, used to align subsequent forensic findings. While the 911 call was still ongoing, a gunshot was heard. The sound interrupted the communication between the witness and emergency services. The call recording captured the reaction to the gunshot, confirming the moment of the shooting as approximately 11:15 p.m. Immediately after the gunfire, witnesses observed Lewis leaving the residence. He exited the scene in Elem's personal vehicle, which was later identified and recovered by investigators. The act of leaving the scene before police arrival was noted in the probable cause documentation and used to establish consciousness of guilt. No immediate response from the suspect followed. Elem remained inside the residence with a single gunshot wound. The witness who made the emergency call provided dispatchers with critical details: location, description of the suspect, and the direction of flight in the vehicle. Police officers from the St. Louis County Police Department, Afton Southwest Precinct, were dispatched to the location at approximately 11:20 p.m. Upon arrival, they located Elem inside the residence, suffering from an apparent gunshot wound. Medical personnel were immediately requested. Elem was transported to a local hospital by emergency medical services. Despite medical intervention, she was later pronounced dead. The exact time of death was not released publicly, but records indicate that she succumbed to her injuries shortly after arrival at the hospital. Crime scene investigators secured the residence. Physical evidence, including traces of blood, ballistic fragments, and signs of a struggle, were cataloged. The residence remained under police control for several hours as detectives conducted evidence collection and photographic documentation. Following the shooting, Lewis fled in the victim's vehicle. Reports later revealed that he allegedly transferred the firearm to another individual, removing it from his possession before apprehension. This action complicated recovery of the weapon but was documented in statements by witnesses and supporting investigation notes. Lewis later gave a false statement regarding the sequence of events. He claimed that Elem had been shot while they were driving together and that he had transported her to a hospital. This account directly conflicted with both eyewitness reports and forensic evidence, which established the shooting occurred inside the residence. Investigators used these contradictions to build probable cause for his arrest and charging. Eyewitness accounts became foundational to the case. Witnesses observed multiple components of the event, the argument escalating from verbal to physical violence. Lewis physically striking Elem, Elem's verbal expression of fear and intent to retrieve a firearm, Elem instructing the witness to call 911. The sound of a single gunshot during the call. The suspect fleeing the scene in Elem's vehicle. Victim statements prior to the shooting, particularly her request for help and acknowledgement of fear, were entered into the case as verbal evidence establishing context and possible motive. Physical evidence included the firearm, later recovered through follow-up investigation, the vehicle used for flight, the medical findings from Elem's injuries, and forensic documentation from the residence. The bullet trajectory and gunshot residue patterns later contributed to establishing proximity and angle of fire. The St. Louis County Police Department, Afton Southwest Precinct, led the investigation with assistance from the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Detectives collected statements from witnesses and obtained surveillance footage from nearby properties to trace the movement of the suspect vehicle. The department's domestic violence and homicide units jointly processed the case. The probable cause document detailed the sequence: a domestic dispute, physical assault, the victim's request for emergency assistance, and the fatal gunshot heard during the 911 call. The report also included the suspect's immediate departure and his later false narrative about the shooting occurring while driving. The inconsistencies between his story and verified evidence became central to the prosecution's foundation for charges. Lewis was located and arrested later that night in St. Louis City, found in possession of the victim's vehicle. His apprehension was executed without resistance. Upon questioning, he admitted to having been involved in a physical altercation with Elem, but denied intentionally shooting her. His statements were partially corroborated, confirming the fight, but contradicting all evidence concerning the location and nature of the gunshot. His claim that the incident occurred inside a moving car was ruled inconsistent with both the crime scene and medical findings. Lewis was booked and charged with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and third-degree domestic assault. His bond was set at $400,000 cash only, with no 10% option. The medical examiner's office performed a full autopsy. The results confirmed a single gunshot wound as the cause of death. The entry point indicated the shot was fired at close range. No evidence supported the claim that the shooting occurred inside a vehicle. The bullet trajectory and residue confirmed that the shot was fired while both individuals were inside the residence. Ballistic analysis identified the type of firearm and linked it to shell casings recovered at the scene. The gun, later recovered through cooperation with secondary witnesses, was determined to have been the weapon used in the homicide. The autopsy also documented additional physical injuries consistent with a physical struggle, aligning with eyewitness testimony of punching prior to the shooting. Multiple witnesses contributed consistent accounts. Each confirmed the sequence of events: argument, physical violence, request to call 911, gunshot, and the suspect's flight. Cross-examination potential exists mainly in establishing precise timing between the start of the 911 call and the discharge of the weapon. Neighboring residents provided supplementary statements, reporting hearing raised voices and a gunshot around 11:15 p.m. Their observation supported the internal witness's account and the timing documented in dispatch records. All statements, physical evidence, and forensic findings aligned to produce a coherent reconstruction of the event that night. The second-degree murder charge implies prosecutors believe Lewis knowingly caused Elem's death without premeditation. The armed criminal action charge links a homicide to the use of a firearm, increasing potential penalties. The third-degree domestic assault charge stems from the earlier portion of the encounter, when witnesses stated Lewis struck Elem multiple times during an argument before the shooting occurred. A bond hearing was held shortly after Lewis's arrest. The court set bond at $400,000 cash only, with no 10% option, effectively requiring full payment before any potential release. The decision reflected the seriousness of the charges and the risk assessment tied to flight or further violence. As of the latest public record, Lewis remains in custody at the St. Louis County Justice Center pending further court proceedings. The defendant's initial court appearance took place within days of the arrest. Court documents show that Lewis was formally advised of the charges, entered an initial plea of not guilty, and was assigned legal representation. The preliminary hearing was scheduled to confirm sufficient evidence for trial. During these early proceedings, prosecutors filed requests for continued detention based on public safety concerns. In the pretrial phase, several standard motions are expected. These include motions to suppress evidence, particularly if the defense questions how investigators obtain physical or testimonial material. Discovery requests will compel both sides to exchange all investigative and forensic reports. The defense will likely seek access to the probable cause statement, autopsy findings, ballistic test results, and witness interviews compiled by the St. Louis County Police Department. The probable cause statement, released to public, outlines that witnesses observed Lewis physically assaulting Elem before hearing a gunshot while one of them was on the phone with emergency services. It also records that Lewis fled the scene in Elem's vehicle and later provided a false account, claiming that the victim had been shot while the two were driving together. Investigators found discrepancies in this version, including the location of blood evidence, shell casing recovery, and independent witness testimony. Forensic reports, still pending full release, will likely include gunshot residue tests, fingerprint analysis, and ballistic comparisons to confirm weapon usage. The autopsy report will establish the trajectory and distance of the fatal shot, the presence of defensive wounds, and time of death. Together, these components will determine whether the shooting could have been accidental or deliberate. Witness statements are central to the prosecution's case. At least one eyewitness reported seeing Lewis punch Elem before the shooting and hearing Elem's plea to call 911. This testimony forms a backbone of the prosecution's timeline and contradicts Lewis's later claims. The defense strategy has not been publicly finalized. Possible directions include self-defense, arguing that the shooting occurred during a struggle or accidental discharge of the weapon. The defense may also challenge the credibility of witnesses, focusing on inconsistencies in statements regarding the sequence of events. They may highlight timing discrepancies, such as the moment the 911 call began versus a gunshot, and raise questions about ownership and possession of the firearm. The prosecution strategy will rely heavily on physical and testimonial evidence. Prosecutors plan to emphasize Lewis's false statements to police as an indication of consciousness of guilt. The combination of eyewitness testimony, forensic findings, and medical examiner conclusions is expected to be presented to establish intent and counter claims of accident. If convicted, Lewis faces significant penalties under Missouri law. Second-degree murder carries a sentence of 10 to 30 years, or life imprisonment. Armed criminal action adds a mandatory minimum of 3 years without parole, and domestic assault in the third degree can result in up to 7 years in prison. Aggravating factors include the use of a firearm, the domestic context, and prior history of violence, if any. Mitigating factors could include cooperation, lack of prior convictions, or claims of remorse. Major regional media outlets, including KMOV, First Alert 4, and Fox 2 St. Louis, reported the case within days of the shooting. Coverage primarily focused on the domestic nature of the dispute, the charges, and the ongoing investigation. Reports cited court documents, police press releases, and community statements. Bond information and the witness's account were among the first details released publicly. Community response was immediate. Residents of the Grace Avenue area in Afton told reporters they heard the argument and subsequent gunfire late at night. Some expressed concern over increasing domestic incidents in the neighborhood. Family members confirmed that Elem did not have life insurance, prompting a fundraiser to cover funeral expenses organized by her mother, Calvinita Brock, through community support platforms. Advocacy organizations, particularly those addressing domestic violence and LGBTQ+ safety, have cited Elem's case as another example of intersecting vulnerabilities faced by young Black and transgender individuals. Some media outlets, such as the Kansas City Star and Yahoo News, identified Elem as a Black trans woman, though this detail has not been consistently reported across all sources. Advocates have urged local authorities and media to ensure sensitivity and accuracy in coverage of gender identity while maintaining focus on the facts of the homicide itself. Legal commentators have criticized aspects of the case handling, focusing on bond conditions and the speed of official updates. Some argue that the $400,000 cash-only bond reflects a limited commitment to pretrial fairness, while others view it as necessary to prevent flight. The transparency of information, including delays in releasing autopsy results and weapon details, has also been questioned by journalists and legal observers. The case has prompted discussion about domestic violence prevention systems in Missouri, with calls for increased early intervention measures and public education programs. Activists highlight that victims in relationships marked by control or intimidation frequently face barriers when seeking help, often resulting in fatal outcomes once violence escalates. Several aspects of the case remain unresolved. Authorities have yet to clarify certain forensic findings, including precise ballistic match between the recovered firearm and the bullet retrieved from the victim. The autopsy specifics, such as the angle of entry, proximity of the weapon, and presence of defensive wounds, have not been released to the public. The number and identity of witnesses have not been confirmed beyond one primary observer cited in the probable cause statement. Details of the locations relative to the scene, potential line of sight limitations, and statement discrepancies have not been addressed in open court. The timeline between the 911 call, the sound of the gunshot, and police arrival remains unclear. Public records have not disclosed the time of death or emergency response intervals, details that could influence reconstruction of the event sequence. Legally, it is unknown whether pretrial hearings have produced any rulings on evidence admissibility or whether the defense has filed motions to dismiss or suppress statements. As of the latest available information, no plea deal has been announced, and no trial date has been publicly set. The role of identity, both racial and gender, remains a discussion point in community and advocacy circles. Some sources identify Elem as a transgender woman, while others report her as female without specification. The differing portrayals have affected how various media outlets frame the story and how advocacy groups approach public awareness efforts. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.